Tom, I guess we could start with the leak on the budget and what you expect to see tomorrow. I heard some people talking earlier today suggesting this may be the biggest spending budget we've ever seen in this country. What are you hearing?
Almost certainly. I mean, we went through cycles during the pandemic where obviously we were rolling out more money, but as a budget per se, yeah, this is probably going to be very high spending. At the same time, Trudeau's got to show that he still takes care of people and he's not intimidated by Poilievre's constant haranguing about trying to roll back the size of government. You have to feel a little bit of sympathy for Chrystia Freeland, who's supposed to be able to navigate in the midst of all of this. But the fact that the Liberals have come up with and are already spinning, stick with the Liberals and we'll send you some money. That's a very old trick, but it works. Francois Legault used it just before the last election. Vote me in, and I'll send you another $600 check to each, to you and your partner. And so, at the same time, we have to know that inflation really is hurting the average family, and getting $450 back, well, that's going to help.
By the way, I want to clarify: they're not sending you a check, right? This will be in the form of a credit. So,
well, you're going to get when you're at on the lower rungs of the socioeconomic ladder, you get a check for your GST. So you're getting paid back what it is estimated that you paid for goods and service tax federally. And so here you'll be getting another one of those checks. You'll be getting an extra one. Will it actually be a paper check or dropped into your account? You're going to be getting the money.
Oh, okay. I thought it was simply a credit applied against something else. All right.
I mean, that's the thing, is that people love getting those checks. And I feel like the idea, that it's your own money that you're getting back goes out the window. But particularly with the seniors here, Tom, I keep coming back to this. I'm bad at math, but that's $4 a week, $225. And a head of broccoli these days is $5. Why do we continually fail? I mean, we don't do enough to help anyone, but particularly seniors. And I would add middle class families to that as well.
Yeah, and that's why upwards of 11 million Canadians are going to be getting that money. But you're right, seniors are particularly hard-pressed because they have a very fixed income, no other way to add to that income, and they're often stuck, especially when they're in the system. Almost their whole check goes over to the CHSLD or the similar institution where they're staying. So, yeah, there's certainly nothing left to go around when you're a senior and you're living off the government pensions.
Who else is left out in this? Because I also found myself immediately wondering about single parents.
Single parents will get something, but they'll get less, obviously, than the two because it's per person. But you're completely right. But there's another trick here. You correctly point out, Natasha, this is just people's money that they're getting back. Although you have to bear in mind that about 40% of Canadians don't pay any income tax because they're not earning enough money to pay income tax. And the other thing that's always galling when you come up with these schemes, I remember Legault's $600 check,
yeah.
So that was $1,200 twice. To average families. But if you're across the street and you and your spouse earn just a titch more than the line that they had drawn, well, you got nothing. And it was, in fact, your taxes going to your neighbor who might be just a little bit under the line. And I've heard a lot of people complain about that. So what Legault did recently was quite interesting. He started lowering the entire tax bracket. So then there were people squawking, oh, well, rich people are going to get a tax break. Yeah, because they pay a lot more taxes than anybody else, too.
How is Pierre Poilievre going to spin this? Because I feel like no matter what, it looks bad for him to criticize.
You've got that all figured out. I couldn't agree with you more. So I think that Poilievre is going to have to uncharacteristically be a little bit careful here. His line that he keeps repeating about it's just inflation, as if Justin Trudeau invented the inflation that has followed the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia and all of the consequences of the spending for the pandemic. That's Trudeau's fault. It's not happening anywhere else. No, actually, it's happening everywhere else, and Canada's not doing that bad by comparison. The other thing that's tricky for him, if he starts to squawk about the check, because his standard line would normally be, if the government's sending out more money, that's going to feed inflation. But good luck, because then Trudeau, at the next campaign in 6 or 8 months, gets to turn around and say, Pierre Poilievre will take away your check. And I lived it with Trudeau in 2015, very thoughtful NDP stuff, deep political analysis, and this is going to be the program and we'll roll this out. Trudeau held a press conference one Saturday in Gatineau and said, vote for me and I'll send you a big check. And he stuck to his promise. Those family support payments, we would have called them in the day, they would have called family allowances or baby bonuses, very much the same sort of thing, checks from the government. Good luck with Poilievre if he's thinking of telling Canadians, I want you to be free of government, I'll reduce the size of government, and I'll take back your check. good luck with that.
Not quite conservative. Listen, with respect then to a vote, you're still kind of leaning toward October as a maybe here for a federal election?
Yeah, I'm still thinking of this fall, which is fun because in the pundit universe, there are not a lot of people who are saying the same thing. They just see this deal between Singh and Trudeau, and they're sort of going, "No, it's just going to keep humming along." So I love being a contrarian, but my reading of the tea leaves leads me to still believe that Trudeau's going to look at the measure of this thing. He's going to have finished his 8th year in October. As he starts his 9th year, do you think Canadians are actually going to give him another 4? Now, he's going to get to point to Pierre Poilievre and say, scary right-wing guy, don't vote for him, whatever happens. And he's going to try to steal as much NDP vote as he can. By the way, that's what Jagmeet Singh was doing over the weekend in his interview with Vashi Kapelas on CTV Question Period. He was trying to say, wow, we've brought you all this good stuff. You have to keep voting for the NDP as well. He also said that he wants to be prime minister, but I'm pretty sure in his heart of hearts he doesn't believe that for one second. He does believe that every single NDP vote could be in danger if the Liberals manage to convince people don't split the vote because Poilievre is scary. So this is a big election for the NDP, and Singh is quite concerned. So he's rolling his stuff out quite early. I don't see Trudeau going much beyond the fall, Aaron, to be honest with you. And it's not true that he has to wait to be defeated. It's not in his nature to let other people beat him. He's going to be the one to pull the plug and say, well, it's, Parliament's become this, and, it's a time to have this clash of ideas. Do you want the austerity of Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives, or do you want the generosity of the progressive Liberal /NDP alliance? So it's going to be fun to watch.
Fun. I hadn't heard of that word austerity now in quite some time since the Liberals were in government provincially. So let me ask you this. Fallout from Biden's visit, I know it's actually been fairly good on both sides of the border. What about with respect to Roxham Road and the Safe Third Country Agreement? What have you heard since this was announced?
So overall, immediate reaction from Legault, this is tremendous. We've asked for this because, to be fair, Quebec sometimes gets this self-inflicted black eye because of things like Bill 21 that overtly discriminates against religious minorities, Bill 96 that overtly discriminates against the English-speaking community, and so forth. But it wasn't fair to criticize Quebec because Quebec was getting 85% of the people coming, and we've got 22% of the Canadian population. And so it really was an unbelievable strain. I mean, we're talking just in the last year, over 40,000 people, and all the demands that means for housing, and we've got a housing shortage right now, and all the demands that it meant for education, for healthcare. So something had to be done about it. So the basic notion is to say that now it doesn't matter whether it's at Lacal or Roxham Road, you're going to get a proper analysis of your case, but you're going to generally be told you're in a country that recognizes the rule of law and international order, and you make your demand and your request in the United States. That's what's supposed to happen. But if you're listening to people who work with immigrants and work with people who are seeking refuge, they're going to tell you that it's going to turn into a gong show.
Right.
It's a good thing that winter's almost over because we don't want people freezing in the woods, but they'll find tons of other crossing points. And once you've been in Canada for 2 weeks, then they have to consider your request for asylum. So it's going to be complicated, but at least that whole notion of having this completely irregular crossing, where people were greeted with government set up buildings, which didn't make any sense anymore, at least that part has been taken care of.
I find, what I was observing was that, of course, this went into effect on Friday at midnight, I believe, right? But the news hasn't gotten to people. So people are still showing up thinking that it's business as usual there. Does that not just make it you were talking about chaos, and I think when I think of the chaos, I think of people trying to cross elsewhere or hide out for 2 weeks so that they're over that 2-week limit, or lie about the 2 weeks. But isn't there already chaos happening simply because the news has not gotten to people who are still trying to cross?
Yeah, and they are crossing, by the way. I mean, I was reading news reports today in one of the main French papers, and they were saying, well, no, we've just talked to a bunch of people who live close to Roxham Road. One on the American side who's just watching people walk through his backyard over to Canada. So, we haven't quite got this thing figured out. And people who work closely with people seeking asylum will tell you that there is a basic unfairness to the idea of closing the door because Canada has its international obligations. Justin Trudeau, at the time of Donald Trump, went out of his way to tweet, "Welcome to Canada. We're not like the United States, that's shutting its doors." But once we realized what that was translating into, then it was Justin Trudeau who had to start shutting some doors.
And as I guess it's worth pointing out, when they closed the border because of COVID, obviously people stopped. The numbers went down significantly. I imagine it'll take a little while for this new decision to kind of filter its way through the rest of the world. That in and of itself, I imagine, will reduce numbers. But then I worry, as people fairly point out, if it's not Roxham Road, pick a place anywhere along that unprotected border, and maybe it'll be somewhere else. But at the same time, you'd have to think fewer and fewer people would want to come here then and run that risk. But time will tell.
Well, especially in the dead of winter.
Sure.
Because, whether it's here in Quebec or on the Manitoba, North Dakota border, that sort of thing, you get this stuff all the time. But it is an 8,800 kilometer undefended border, so it's pretty porous. There will be places, but then who are the people who are going to be running people through? Are they going to be internationally, when you have this sort of situation where people are fleeing horrors, then very unsavory characters take over and they're doing horrible things. So that's what you've also got to be concerned about.
Tom Mulcair back tomorrow morning with 740 here on CJAD. Tom, thank you.